Good evening. Welcome to the Crown Hill Journey. My name is Christina Aft, and I'm the author of Crown Hill and Now Live, Love, Life in the Afterlife. I hope that you are excited about joining me for this journey. For the month of April, we are reading a chapter or two every night, so that by the end of the month, we'll have read the entire book. You see me in a new setting tonight. We spent the first how many days? I'm not even sure what today is anymore. I think it's the 8th. So we spent the first 7 days in my office with a regular video camera and live streaming connection. And I thought it would be the most effective way to read the book to you. But as it turned out, due to a lot of reasons, some of it being that there's so many people online, the technology is being overwhelmed, and also my lack of techno skills just made it too difficult. And the whole thing crescendoed last night when I read an entire chapter of the book and there was no sound to you listeners. It was shocking to me when I looked at the camera and saw all of you saying, guess what? We can't hear you. So I apologize for last night. And from now on, we will be here. It's a window seat in my room. It's a little bit of a light coming behind me. I hope it's not too distracting. As the sun sets, it will get better. But we'll try, and we'll see what happens from here. I just want to do a quick review because I know we have some new people joining us tonight. And now, because I'm on my phone, I can see you. Hi, Kathy, Peggy, thank you for coming back. So where we are, Crown Hill is a house in Eden, New York. It was belonged to Owen and Mary Southwick in the 1880s. Mary died a violent death. She was found hanged in a woodshed behind the house. That led to the house being known as the Haunted House on the Hill in the town of Eden. From there, in the late 1800s through the almost 1930, a family from Buffalo, New York named the Randall family, Edward Randall, his wife Maria, and their 2 daughters, owned Crown Hill as their summer home. We have met them. We have met Edward and his wife, and also experienced a young neighbor who came to visit them one day. Her name is Margaret Rose Jennings, but she likes to be called Rose. And while she was at the house, she was walking by one day and saw it and fell in love with the house, was completely drawn to it. So she knocked on the door and came in and visited Maria and her 2 daughters. And while she was there, she had some type of an episode that frightened the girls and Maria. So they made sure she recovered, took her back to her house. Her mother is a governess for the Spaldings, which are the neighbors to Edward and Maria Randall. And Maria walked the young girl, Rose, back to her mother and walked away because she felt very strongly that whatever happened with Rose in her house was spiritual in nature somehow. And she had never had anything like that happen before. Enter Edward Randall, who comes to stay the summer with his family. He calms his wife and daughters. They're feeling pretty good. And then the next thing they know, a face appears in the mirror. A face of a spirit appears in the mirror of the dining room sideboard and seemingly is trying to speak to Edward, although there's no sound. At that point, Maria and the girls are gone. They don't want any part of it anymore. They just want to have a calm summer, so they leave. In the meantime, Edward has invited his friend, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and yes, he is the author of Sherlock Holmes. He has invited him to come to Crown Hill and spend some time during the summer. So Sir Arthur Conan Doyle comes. Edward shares with him what has happened when Rose was in the house, and the 2 of them decide that it was some type of spiritual activity, but why they can't figure out because nothing like that has ever happened at Crown Hill before. Eventually, the 2 men figure they need to go back and find Rose, that she is the common denominator. So that's where we are now. Edward and Sir Arthur have gone to the Spaldings' house where they meet Helen Spalding, the owner. She is a book lover and she is also an amateur mystery writer. When she realizes she's meeting Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, she flips out, becomes very excited, and brings Sir Arthur and Edward into her home. And we have seen that happen, and now we're ready to see what happens when Edward and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle meet up with Rose and Rose's mother, whose name is Elizabeth Jennings. And that's where we are tonight. There'll be 2 chapters, and so let's get started. Crown Hill, a novel of love, life, and the afterlife. Book 2, Edward, Chapter 9. The slight young girl passed quietly into the Spaldings' parlor. She looked neither at Edward nor at Sir Arthur, but instead moved immediately to her mother, Elizabeth's side. Helen had summoned Elizabeth and her daughter upon hearing Sir Arthur's need for transcription help. "Rose, I would like you to meet our neighbor, Mr. Randall. I believe you met his wife and his daughters the other day. They live in the big white house on the hill next door." The delicate 14-year-old cast a glance toward the two men seated across the room. They found her gaze mesmerizing, with her deeply blue eyes framed by lush lashes, her face highlighted by a waterfall of auburn curls. Edward offered his best fatherly smile while extending a gentle greeting. "Hello, Rose. I'm pleased to make your acquaintance. My daughters told me all about your visit to Crown Hill. It's nice to have this chance to meet in person. This is my friend, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. He is an author who has come here to do some research for a new book that he's writing." Again, the girl looked shyly at the two men, offering a delicate smile in place of words. Edward pressed on. "We were wondering if you might be interested in working for us at Crown Hill during the next week. It would be just several hours a day, rewriting and organizing some of Sir Arthur's notes." At the suggestion of returning to Crown Hill, Rose became transformed. Smiling brightly, she responded, "Oh, yes, sir, I'd like that very much." She then turned to her mother with an animated request. "Oh, please, Mother, may I?" Looking first for an affirming nod from Helen Spaulding, Elizabeth agreed that her daughter could work a few afternoons for the gentleman, as long as the child's household chores were completed, and only after she had eaten her lunch. Speaking directly, the protective mother added that she needed her daughter to return to the Spauldings by 3:30 each afternoon to care for the barn animals and help feed and bathe the Spaulding children. With the details agreed upon, Elizabeth delivered one final condition. "I have heard that Agnes Jones is temporarily in your employ. I must insist that Agnes always be present whenever Rose is at the house. No respectable young woman would ever be found working in a home with two men, famous or otherwise." Elizabeth's stipulation caused both Edward and Sir Arthur to flush in embarrassment. Not only were both men fathers to daughters about Rose's age, each was very much in love with their wife. The thought of any type of wrongdoing with this innocent young girl had never crossed their minds. Rather, they were completely absorbed by the mission of reaching the spirit they believed was connected to the young woman. "Of course, all of those conditions are fine," Edward responded, "and we'll pay 5 cents a page if that is acceptable." While it was not an overly generous amount to Rose, it was more money than she had ever earned working for her mother. The girl could barely contain her excitement as she blurted out a reply. "Oh, yes, sir, that would be wonderful. When would you like me to start?" It was at this point that Sir Arthur joined in the conversation. "Let's say tomorrow afternoon around 1:30. That way Mr. Randall and I have the early part of the day to prepare." "Very well, sir. I shall see you tomorrow at Crown Hill at 1:30 promptly." "All right, Rose," Elizabeth, her mother, commanded. "Time to go about our business." With that, mother and daughter departed. Emitting a high-pitched giggle, Helen flirtatiously asked, "Well, now, Sir Arthur, if you don't mind my asking, what is this new book of yours about?" "Well, madame, I never give away the plot of a book in progress," Doyle answered in his most charming demeanor. "Suffice it to say that I am writing about spiritualism and the ways in which those who have passed communicate with the living." "Oh my! Oh my! The very thought of such a thing makes chills run up and down my spine." Helen nervously fluffed her perfectly coiffed hair. "Are you sure that a young girl such as Rose is the appropriate person to help with this project? I mean, I wouldn't want anything untoward to result. You know, nightmares or things of that sort." With another burst of off-key laughter, Helen revealed her true intent. "Well, perhaps you might be able to use someone a bit more mature to work with you, Sir Arthur. Actually, now that I think of it, I I might be able to clear my busy schedule and make myself available. I am an avid mystery reader, and I do have some background in writing the genre." Taking pity on his cohort, Edward quickly diverted the conversation. "My, what a generous offer, Helen! But we could never impose upon a woman of your talents for menial transcription work. I'm sure that Rose is more than capable of managing the tasks involved in copying over Sir Arthur's manuscript. And now I'm afraid that we must be on our way. Much to do, you know." Determined to continue her interaction with the illustrious author, Helen immediately responded, "Well, all right then. I will accept your abrupt departure, but only if you promise to return for dinner on Friday." Edward graciously sidestepped the request with a "possibly" reply, and then deftly exited the house, with Sir Arthur close behind. Making their way down the driveway, the ever-optimistic Scotsman gave a hearty chuckle. "Well, I thought that was jolly good fun." "I thought it was a nightmare," Edward responded. "I felt as if we were lying to all three of them. And what happens now if the woman in the mirror does reappear to Rose, and we have not told her mother the whole truth? What will we do then?" "See here, my good man, we did not lie. We simply created a job as a means of returning the child to the scene of the crime, so to speak. And who knows what will happen when she comes to Crown Hill tomorrow? Perhaps this spirit of yours will not even appear. Perhaps whatever happened, or what you and your family witnessed, is over and done with, as quickly and as oddly as it started. Point of proof, consider the fact that nothing has occurred since my arrival. I say, you are making a mountain out of the proverbial molehill." The men walked the remainder of the distance between the two houses in silence. As they approached the Crown Hill driveway, Edward stopped, turned, and looked directly into Sir Arthur's eyes. "Let me make one thing perfectly clear. I do not want anything to happen to this young girl while she is here at Crown Hill." "And you think that I would?" Sir Arthur countered. "Edward, you are acting as if I brought this spirit into your home, and that I am responsible for its involvement with Rose. I have no ties to this whole experience other than serving as your friend and wanting to help solve your dilemma. So let us agree that we are in this project together as partners, and we will not go forward on any action unless we are both quite right with the process." The truth of Sir Arthur's words impacted Edward like a sharp blow across the face. He immediately regretted his words and offered an apology, which the Scotsman naturally waved off good-naturedly. With peace restored between them, the two men strode along Crown Hill's winding driveway, entering the house and then exiting onto the porch. Once comfortably settled, Agnes served them a late lunch of rare roast beef sandwiches on her specialty Kimmelwick rolls, topped with rye seeds, caraway seeds, and salt, complemented with German potato salad. While they ate, the cohorts laid out a plan for the following day. As the intense sun ebbed into a magnificent amber horizon, the two men welcomed the evening over generous tumblers of scotch and fine Cuban cigars, gifted to Sir Arthur by Harry Houdini. There they remained without interruption, discussing the meaning of life and death into the night's starry moonrise. And now, the voice of the house narrating the end of the chapter. I listened intently as Edward and Sir Arthur laid out their plan for meeting with Rose. As they plotted, I tried to balance the possibility of all they envisioned with the disappointing realities Mary and I had experienced so many times since her passing. At the end of the night, I could not help but believe that this time, with these two men, And with this young girl, it could be different. That was the message of hope I took to Mary in the midst of the night. Yet, unlike my mindset, her sense of optimism was tempered. Dearest Crownhill, what is it that makes you believe in Sir Arthur? We have known Edward long enough to trust his nature and abilities, but what of this man who has befriended him? Sweet Mary, I say that in all ways his good-natured heart appears to lead him, which makes him a balance to Edward's logical nature. As for his spiritual abilities, it would seem that he is genuine and unafraid, which reinforces Edward's demeanor. I believe that together these two men possess the strength and courage to understand and deal with the tragedies that your spirit has endured. Mary dropped deeply into my being, staying silent and still. I could only imagine what she was feeling, the long and exhausting time that she had been forced to remain on this earth with no ties, no foundation, no ability to go forward or back. After so many years of agony, to even begin to consider that the torture might soon be over had to be overwhelming. Further, somewhere in all of her imaginings lurked this reality. If and when she were able to finally move on, she would be leaving me behind. Crownhill? Yes, my Mary. What about the girl? What about her? What is her purpose? Why has she come into our world? I believe it is due to her purity of heart and soul, dearest. While Edward and Sir Conan Doyle have the strength to free you from that which keeps you earthbound, Rose's innocence can illuminate your path to the spirit world. Without her goodness, your release from all earthly ties will be impossible. Silence again walled Mary away from me. As the night sky faded into the dawn's sepia hue, I felt a deep fear welling up within me from a source I knew only too well. Crownhill, yes, my sweet friend, I am here. Please, do not leave me. I cannot face this alone. I understand, and I am here for you, always. Chapter 10. Rose could hardly sleep. The prospect of earning money by copying words onto paper filled her mind with imaginings of chocolate candies and satin hair ribbons that she would soon be able to buy. At the same time, she was troubled by the awake dream she had experienced at Crownhill. Rose was a sheltered child, aware of little outside the protected world in which her widowed mother, Elizabeth, had raised her. As a result, the young girl was completely content with her life and her surroundings. It was a perfect existence, marred only by the onset of the disturbing awake dreams in her life. The visualizations first began when Rose became a woman, as her mother explained the rivulet of blood dribbling between her legs. Whenever it became Rose's time of the month, she would inevitably experience a spell where one minute she would be talking and laughing like any young girl, and the next her eyes would glaze over and she would pale, trembling convulsively in place. After a few moments, the episode would end as abruptly as it began, with Rose dropping into a faint. When she awoke, the disoriented girl would be weakened, with little, if any, recall of what had happened. As Rose matured, her spells became stronger and more clearly connected to what Elizabeth feared was an evolving spiritual sensitivity. What the concerned mother found most alarming was that in the midst of these trances, her daughter would often engage in conversation as if communicating with someone clearly not visible. The resultant sense of fear within Elizabeth made her determined to do everything possible to keep Rose's condition a secret, only between parent and child. However, Elizabeth's determination to safeguard her daughter's condition eventually weakened, following a particularly distressing awake dream. The intensity of Rose's response to whatever had engaged her spirit triggered wild imaginings within Elizabeth over the evils that might threaten her child. Desperate for help, she turned to her own mother and cautiously explained all that she had witnessed. In response, Elizabeth's mother revealed a family history of women who had acted much the same as Rose. She termed them seers and said they possessed the ability to talk with those who had passed. Learning of her family's lore did little to comfort Elizabeth. She immediately dismissed it as Irish poppycock and made her mother promise never to reveal Rose's condition. Yet the seer's story remained with the frightened woman. She found herself fearing for her daughter's soul and offering daily prayers for the young girl's salvation. Whether due to Elizabeth's holy invocations or not, Rose's awake dreams began to play out in a more consistent fashion, and mercifully always when the young girl was at home. In fact, no one outside of Elizabeth had ever witnessed her daughter's odd spells. As a result, Elizabeth chose to identify them as more of a medical condition than any sort of spiritual occurrence, which helped lessen her angst. For Rose's part, she followed her mother's lead, accepting the intense dreams as part of an ongoing medical disorder. While she could neither predict their frequency nor recall their evolution, Rose learned the physical demands the spells extracted from her being and began keeping chocolate always nearby to help revive her body. That is, until the day when she made her way to Crown Hill and her awake dreams were revealed. When the young girl found herself resting in the Randalls' parlor and realized what had happened, she was unsure how to proceed. Although Mrs. Randall and her daughters seemed most kind, her mother had continually warned her no one should ever be told about her condition. Still, she had not elaborated on her medical disorder to the Randalls and obviously had no control over entering into a wake dream in their presence. Therefore, she had adhered to her mother's warnings. All the same, Rose knew inherently that she needed to prevent her mother from ever finding out what had happened to her at Crown Hill. Now, lying in her loft bed, listening to the comforting sounds of her mother's soft snores, Rose found herself consumed with excited thoughts of returning to Crown Hill, along with fears that more uncontrollable wake dreams might await. In truth, I was concerned for the child. From the moment she crossed my threshold, I could sense the purity of Rose's spirit. And after witnessing her connection with Mary, I had no doubt her appearance at my door was in accordance with some greater plan. Yet the manner in which Edward and Sir Arthur were deceiving both the child and her mother raised my concern. What if Rose were unable to endure all that was required to set Mary's spirit free? What if something went amiss during the seances planned by the two men. I reviewed the troubling possibilities endlessly, becoming obsessed with a multitude of frightening outcomes. While I was dedicated to freeing Mary's spirit from the earthly hell in which she was trapped, I did not want another traumatic incident or something worse to happen within my shelter. I could only imagine avoiding such tragedy by communicating with Edward. I needed a way to connect with him that would encourage his most careful consideration of Rose and her spiritual gift. I began with Mary. Mary, please come near so we can talk. I am here, dear friend. I hold great concern about young Rose. While there is no doubt she is essential to you, I need to be sure she will be well protected. It is my hope that you understand the same and will do whatever is required to ensure her well-being. Dearest Mary, I believe we need to reach out to Edward. Bring him thoughts that will help him safeguard the child. Mary's response to me was immediate. What is it you think could happen? What concerns you so? I am not sure. It's really not a specific idea or fear, more a feeling that something could go terribly wrong, and this child does not deserve to suffer while engaged in helping us. Kind heart, I understand your care for Rose. She is a beautiful child with a radiant soul. That is exactly why I was drawn to her when she first came to us. Yet without a specific reason for your protective feelings, I'm not sure what it is you want Edward to think or do. Dear Crown Hill, while I love you, I have endured many years of spiritual pain and sorrow within your shelter. Now, when it seems that I have finally maybe freed from my earthly bonds, what is it that you would have me do? Listening to Mary's voice, I could sense her long endured pain, feel her depleted spirit. Hearing her words, I realized Mary could play no part in reaching out to Edward. Thus I was caught in a triangle of worry. While I passionately desired Mary's release from this earth, I was concerned for Rose's safety and needed to protect my own well-being as well. I did not want to become overwhelmed once more by a painful human tragedy as happened with Mary's death. Such sorrow had almost destroyed my being once. I would not, could not allow it to happen again. In considering all these things, reaching out to Edward would have to become my purpose and mine alone. I'm exhausted. I hope that tonight was a good reading for you. We don't often read 2 chapters if you're new to this. We had a flub-a-dub last night with no sound, so we put 2 chapters together tonight for almost the rest of the book. There will only be 1 chapter a night. We run about 20 to 25 minutes a night. That was chapter 10. We have 11, 12, 13, 5 chapters left in Edward's book. And things are going to get busy in these next 5 chapters. And you are going to learn much more about Rose. You're going to see how how Crown Hill desperately tries to influence Edward to make sure that she's protected. And you're going to see what happens when all hell breaks loose eventually. And then we will move on to the 3rd book, which is happens in 1995. So the first book was Mary, which was in 1884. This book of Edward is in 1920. I believe it is, or 19, I don't know, we'd have to, but in the 1920s, and then 1922. And then the third book will be Meg, and that will be in 1995. So thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for joining in the Crown Hill Journey. I appreciate it. It makes a difference. I hope that you enjoy it. And if you have any comments or if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the comments of this live broadcast. I did speak to the medium, Candy Donaldson Thornton, who worked with me on this book and helped me to be able to write this book. And she is going to do a broadcast with me when we finish reading this book at the end of April. And you'll get a chance to hear our experience together and how this book evolved. And then also there is a fourth book to Crown Hill that was never published. The only one who's ever seen it is my editor, and I will read that as well in May. So we have a lot to look forward to, and I hope that it helps. I know that being home, the way we're quarantined is tough, especially with the holidays, Passover and then Easter. So I hope that this helps somewhat. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow night at 7:30. We're here every night, Sunday through Saturday, 7:30 on Facebook Live on my Facebook page. So thank you. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and thank you for enjoying the Crown Hill Journey.